Good morning. Hello. How are you? Nice. Welcome to this Morgenbooster season this fall, 2025. Nice to see so many people. We're lucky that you all want to come here. We have for you today 5 perspectives on designing for complexity. And my name is Oliver. I've been in 1508 for 10 years now. I've heading up this place for the past 3 years. Took over after Mikkel over here. And I brought 3 good colleagues, Cecilie, Bo and Louise. And we will all give you some perspectives on this. So let me just kick it off, and we will change microphones along the way. And you will hear from all of us. I think a couple of years ago, something changed when we had lunch at this place. So the discussions that we had, they changed character. And the things that we actually talked about was not, what are you going to do next week? How is your family? But it was some of the more bigger things out there. And I've tried to figure out why this changed, but I have an hypothesis. Maybe it was because we also changed our corporate language to English, and we started to get new perspectives because we hired people from all over the Nordics, from Brazil, from New Zealand, from Poland, from Germany, and other places. So we actually started to have other conversations that we used to have. And what kind of came to our minds was things about climate, biodiversity, crisis, mental health, all the things that we actually influenced of, and we categorize it as a polycrisis. And that is real for us. So at some point, we said to each other, could we actually create a workplace where we not only talk about these things over lunch, but we actually try to do something about them? And how can design be an enabler in these things? So essentially what it comes down to is we want future generations to look back at 1508 and say, hey, they were not a part of the problem. They were actually a part of the solution. And that is what we're going to talk to you guys about. So looking at design and giving a perspective on design, we could say what we used to solve as problems were what we call human-centered complicated problems. It started with something around brand identities, logos, posters, packaging. And then design thinking gave us the ability to maybe create products and services and so forth, but they were all human-centered and complicated problems. Now some of the challenges that we face, they are way more complex. They are systemic in its form. So when we get over here, we need to maybe have new competencies, maybe look at how can we evolve our design craft and our skills. So you could also say that design's philosophy has always been, you can present us with any challenge out there, and then we can solve it with design thinking in our design craft. But there is actually a gap in our methodology, and we need to add to this gap to see if we can actually become a part of solving the real complex problems out there. So for many, many years, we have said, as our purpose, we want to dare to matter to create meaningful change. And we have been designing digital experiences for 25 years, some more iconic than others, but still pretty good digital experience, I would say. What we want to add to this value proposition, as we call it now, is that we actually want to dedicate ourselves to drive these systemic transitions out there. And we see our design craft as an enabler for this. We also want to make sure that everything that we design are 100% responsible when it's actually outputted. So what systemic transitions is it that we actually want to work on? I think agencies and consultancies for many years have just had progress and processes that we could take our clients' problems and try to solve them with these, but we have never really taken a stance towards anything. But right now, what we want to change is that we want to say out loud, we actually have an opinion about where we see the world should go for everyone to have a better living. So going out there and putting ourselves out there also means that we are way more intentional about the things that we work on. And I will come back to what we are focused on right now. And when we say responsible, how can we be responsible with the things that we output? It's actually pretty basic. It needs to be 100% ethical. It needs to be sustainable, inclusive, and accessible in everything that we output. We will not compromise on these things. So what we offer now is that we create experiences. We have done this for 25 years. We're pretty good at it, I would say. But also, we want to facilitate transitions and the systemic transitions out there. And that means that we need a new skill set. We need something else that you can actually buy at 1508 that you haven't been able to buy before. And this is new for us. So transition design, weaving together intervention strategies and things like this. You can actually buy it at 1508 now. But to be able to do this, we've also looked at what do we actually have in our toolbox. And these are the things that my good colleagues, Cecilie, Bo, and Louise will talk about. So we categorize it in 4 different terms: experience design, business design, futures design, and transition design. And this is our enabler to actually solve these complex problems. Want to go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to try to give you my 5th sense on experience design, the mother of all the other things, and why we still, even though everything is changing, believe that this sort of has a pretty important role to play in what we do here. So this is our doodle on how we see experience design. I think if you've been here before, you've probably seen it before. It's been with us for a lot of years. I don't even know how many, maybe 10 or something. And obviously it was created when design thinking also hit. But before I'm jumping into this, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a brief example on what I mean when I say experience design. Yeah, so these are all examples of creating experiences with something where we found out what is the problem, trying to deductively figure out what is the core of that, constantly try to create, explore, and prototype on it, and at the last end try to figure out how do we even bring it out into the world and how do we make it a reality. They are also products of design thinking. It's both a mindset and it is also a craft, 2 very different things. I'm going to jump a little bit into the mindset first. Obviously, this is the backbone of a lot of the things that we do, and it is built on previous good work from the Double Diamond and obviously the elements of design thinking, where I think not only us, but everyone here has learned the power of being able to empathize, the power of being able to define and understand a problem, the power of ideation, where you don't do one home run and then you're done and then you think you have the greatest idea in the world. Prototyping, where you're actually put to the test on how can you visualize stuff, how can you be very specific on what it is that you're dreaming about and not just put an idea into a business backlog and then nobody knows what you really intended. And the test, where you're also set out to figure out what it is that you're trying to prove. So originally, experience design worked within this space. You have a user situation or a user, very user-centric. You have somewhere where you want them to go, you want them to change your behavior, you want them to explore something, you want them to be able to do something, you want them in a different place than when you start off. And that gives us a space where we can create solutions and ideas, and that we're pretty good at. We've done for several years. So, with everything that Oliver talked about, what is it that's changing? Yeah, so you can probably imagine as a designer, I disagree. But the thing is that I've read like 1 million articles on design thinking is dead, design as a craft is dead, UX is dead, and we need to reinvent ourselves. The thing is though, coming from that backbone of design thinking and double diamond and the mindset and actually also the craft, I highly disagree. I think that the fact that we can do that is actually very important in the complex situations that we find ourselves in today. So what has changed is the context and not us as skill sets and mindsets. So one of the changing elements that is being discussed a lot is obviously AI and what it can do, from vibe coding to doing all your research for you, and I could go on and on and on. It is quite amazing and also quite scary. And what does AI even mean? Can we do AI for good and all of that? Then obviously as an agency, insourcing, now you all can do what we can do. What do we do then? And everyone being a designer, which is great because that's actually what we set out to do with design thinking, saying we have this process where if you go through it, you'll actually be able to learn something new. So all of that is good, but where does it leave us and what is the change? The thing for us is that now we actually have, if we use AI in the right way, we actually have way more time for critical reflection because that's one thing that AI cannot do. And also with everything that's happening, we understand the necessity, what is it called? Necessity, thank you, of actually designing with intention and not just bringing out a lot of junk into the world, but actually doing with intention. What does that mean? That means being responsible in how we set up algorithms, how we track data, how we nudge people or tell us we're nudging, but we're really manipulating, and giving the user the control back when everything is really possible within everything that's being given to us. So for us, this just means a focus on the things that we do best and actually being able to have more time for that. So coming back to this, still pretty fond of it, and we're still going to use it, and it is the backbone of everything that we do. But the thing is that the context has changed a lot. So the pillars that we stand on and the things that we take with us is empathy. Empathy is not just saying that we understand a user need, but it is actually understanding that humans are humans. And when I say that is that this thing about rationality and being rational just doesn't go for humans. If we were more rational, I would say that the polycrisis would be less of a problem if we actually did what we saw out in the world and set it out. That's just not how we operate. But reminding ourselves in the journey that we are on is really important. Bias awareness. When you do research and when you are curious about stuff, then you have to be aware of your own biases, but that also means that you get very curious about the biases that are in play in whatever we decide to do. Responsibility also goes with an empathy, figuring out does the world really need this? Why are we creating this? And how can we take a stance on where we want to be with that? Asking why, as a UXer, that's probably the most annoying part about me. But again, it has led us to make sure that we're always curious. And you can say curiosity is something that we all have, but I think what it reminds us of is staying curious also means that you stay humble, because you are opening up to the fact that you don't have all the answers. So we should really hold on to that when everything becomes extremely complex. Then asking until it makes sense. Again, not taking everything for granted, and also figuring out, is the premise really the premise? Keeping on asking that and being able to reframe everything that we look into is really a power that we hold on to. Last but not least, and also one of the things that I find to be most important to not be overwhelmed by the things that we are seeing in the world, is actually the way that we can make things tangible. It means being able to visualize, putting pen to paper, actually listening in a room and saying, okay, I can draw that and I can show it back to you. And then obviously it makes more sense than when it was just words on a paper. That also means that we're great at imagining futures and imagining what things could be, which is also super important to hold on to. And if you want to be able to make things tangible, you also have to be quite good at storytelling. So these elements, for me at least, are one of the, or three of the pillars that we hold on to, even when we leave the basics of design thinking behind. So it used to go with the double diamond, designing the right thing, and then designing the thing right. And what has changed now is just the thing. The thing is now not the product. The thing might be the area in which we operate. It might be the culture. It might be the organization. It might actually be that when we have defined a concept for what we want to do, is that it's not about building it right anymore. It's actually about figuring out which arenas we're going to be in and who we want to talk to and how we can create the interventions that we need. So still very much a core for us, still very much something that we bring into play, but it's just taking a turn on how we use it.
Thank you. So next up is business design. And as Cecilie just told you, we use the experience design and the tradition from design thinking to understand the user's situation and the user's aspiration. Where do they really want to go? What do they really want to experience? And once we open up this opportunity space, we can start to create solutions. But there is one problem, though, and there's always been that maybe this is too user-centric. Maybe we need to have empathy for the business as well. So this is why we introduced the strategic level of saying, what is the mission of the organization or company we're working for? What are they set out to do? What gets them up in the morning? Where are they going? The vision, how, the strategy, broken down into different strategic goals, divided into different focus areas. This was the birth of what we call dynamic roadmap. Some of you might have heard of it before. But this basically bridges the gap between strategy and practice. This is also based on a strategic or a hypothesis-driven approach. It's very hard for me to say. I think I did somewhat good. Hypothesis-driven approach. So every time we see a problem or a concept or a solution, we want to break it down into a hypothesis, saying what kind of user experience do we want it to have? How do we want the users to feel? What do we want them to do? This is the first step to make this part not only a creative hype and a cool vibe and digital products that really rocks, but also to have an, I would almost say, empathy for the effect. We need to do something with it. It needs to have an effect. But bringing on the last one is to say we also need the business value. We need to have these things create what is basically going on up here. So we need to click these two together, make a match. So now we have established some sort of backbone or spine down the organization from the strategic level to the executed practice. You could say, you could stand from down, you can say, why are we doing this? Or you can stand up here and say, how are we doing this? And if you don't get the right answers to the questions, how, why, there's a mismatch. Sometimes we see that the strategic goals and the focus areas doesn't really correspond or match with the user's actual problems or dreams or needs or aspirations, and then you get a dislocated spine. The backbone is sort of broken. So this is to get an overview of how the users and the strategy of the business correspond. So it allows strategy to empower direction and mandate to the project teams doing solutions down here. But on the other way around, it also makes the project teams able to inform strategy the other way, because they're the ones doing things in the real world, actually meeting with users. I'm trying to stand in front of the screen for someone else now. So the project teams have to prove business value by solving user problems. They have to create value on the user experience, the behavior, and the business value. And if they don't, these guys up here have to say, then we don't need this. Then we have to pivot or make it kill it. So the hypothesis-driven approach is also to sort of take out any solutions that doesn't do the job or shut down the project or whatever. So this is the map of that. We use the dynamic roadmap online tool to create this kind of map of the mission, vision, strategy, the different strategic goals, the focus areas, and the challenges broken down in what the users feel now, in quotes, and where they want to go. And from there, we can open up and say, we have this and these solutions or initiatives going on. So this is the way we map things. I tried to bring a small case from Lego, I think it was you who did it, Oliver, where we co-create a dynamic roadmap. And this is a small video from the actual online tool. Here you fill out the mission, the vision for Lego, and their strategy called System in Play. And we can dive into the actual tool here with the strategic goals, for instance, digital excellence, unfolding it into different kinds of focus areas, zooming in and out, just to make you dizzy, and then unfolding the user problems for retail partners or fan groups. Where are they now? Where do they actually want to go? We can see the situation and their friction if we want to go that detailed, and then show initiatives for different kinds of concepts or solutions. So this basically gives us, we can open that one as well, and here you see the hypothesis. We think that if we do this kind of solution, we'll have this user experience, this user behavior, and this business impact. And that's the way we want to track if everything goes well. Maybe this looks very complex, but I often tell my clients that making a hypothesis should take no more than 5 minutes. When you come up with an idea, you can always say, I think this is a good idea because I think it will make people feel like this, do like this, and have this impact on my business. It's very easy, actually. So it was just to give you a glimpse on how we overview the business side of things. Hope it wasn't too much. I showed it to my wife yesterday. She was very dizzy. You can't do that. Okay. Okay, so we use this also to remind ourselves and our clients that all things you do end up with being something for someone down here. And can we make that overview? We will also have a way to talk to the people working inside the organizations, whether they are placed in different levels in the organization. There are snakes in paradise. I don't know if you can say that in English, but there is a problem with this also. So, because maybe it sometimes is too reactive only to rely on asking the users. And sometimes we also found ourselves just, when we were doing this, just logging into the corporate website and say, oh, this is the mission, this is the vision, this is the strategy, and just filling out what's already there. So it's a bit of a reactive solution for making products of today, so to say. So how might we challenge the vision? Was a question we ask ourselves. And how might we prepare for change in user situation and user aspirations? For instance, new generations coming with new kind of dreams and hopes and perspectives. And this is where futures design come into play. Because I get to talk about two of these. So futures design is about finding out what is the preferable future. But first I want to say that future is, I know, very fluffy and very abstract. So the first question is, how can we make it more concrete and easier to talk about and take into account? Because we all draw on something we think will happen, but we are not that good at talking about it. And whenever we do, it tends to be like futures, what are fremtidsforsker, future scientists. It's a bit fluffy, and UFOs and stuff like that. So can we make it more tangible in a way? And whenever you talk about the future, people are saying this, so it's very a stereotype, but I'll say it anyway. The future is not a fixed destination. It can go so many places. And I can't predict it, but maybe we can have a language to talk about it. And this is also to say, in relation to some of the things that Oliver said, the future is not a train you step into and it will take you somewhere. Maybe, it could be maybe, but maybe we could force ourselves up in the front wagon or the locomotive or whatever and try to steer it a bit in the direction we want it to go. So this is why we use futures design to explore the possible and preferable futures. So futures design is a method for creating concrete stories and artifacts about a possible future. It makes it more tangible to feel and relate and talk about where we want to go as an organization and help us transform uncertainty and fear into inspiration and vision. I'm not done. Futures thinking can be applied to start conversations, explore alternative scenarios, or develop products that proactively seeks to shape desired outcomes. So we want to see on different kinds of possible futures and pick a preferable. So we draw on something we're good at, something Cecilie just told about. Design thinking, the focus from design thinking, the prototyping and tangibility of design thinking, and the futures thinking 360-degree approach. Everything is possible, what will happen? And we try to combine the two. So this is a bit confusing and I have to do it quick, but we try to scan for signals of change. It could be the banning of social media in Australia, for instance. Something we would talk about at a dinner table. And then we try to identify patterns or themes that are interesting for us. Is that part of something bigger? A thing happening, a thing we don't know where it will go. Will it end up in us feeling a bit ashamed about looking at screens and tech is kind of something you can get addicted to, or will it go in another direction? Once we have themes, we don't know really, is it going this way or this way? We can start to create these kind of, is it called tangents, or you know what I'm doing here, right? And then we can create from there different kind of scenarios or possible future worlds dominated by a certain mindset. Once we have that, our role as designers come into play. If a world is like this, then we will have to be a pension fund like this, or an insurance company like this, or whatever. So we can start to create solutions for that specific scenario or possible future. So we build actual concepts for it. Different scenarios, pick one, pick two, describe what is the dominant mindset in these futures, and create different kinds of products or prototypes for how to be, in this case, a pension fund in a world dominated by individualism and a tech focus, or a very collective mindset, or whatever. And these prototypes or artifacts we can use for an internal discussions in the leadership team or in the company to sort of relate and feel and think about what is our preferred future. So this is the output of what we're doing, but the outcome is that we can, the conversation points in the direction where we actually challenge their current vision and say, maybe we can see it in another way. Maybe we can even change your mission a bit. Does that make sense? That's good. So this is where the preferable future comes into play, and then we can start to backcast and say, okay, if this is your 10 plus years vision, then we can backcast to the strategic 5 years level, and down to the strategic goals, and even to the solutions of today. That's one way of using the futures thinking approach or design approach. As I always said, maybe there's more we need to take into account. Maybe the user, maybe not all problems of today needs the user as a human here. Maybe we need sometimes to put the animals or the plants or the planet in here as the user in order to solve the problems of today. And maybe sometimes the problems we are facing are so deeply rooted that we need to look at a larger perspective. So this is what Louise will tell you about in the transition design segment.
Thanks. Okay. So sometimes, well, this was actually the wrong way. Designing for a preferable or preferable future is not only relevant, as you're saying, like inside the organizations. It's very much, we feel that many of our clients and the companies and organizations we work with, like 1508, we want to make a positive and lasting change in the world, also outside the actual organization. And this is where transition design can play a big role. So planetary, social, societal crises or challenges of today, we need to approach them in a different way, and we really believe that transition design and designers has a role to play in actively shaping the futures and the solutions for the future that is necessary and that the world is actually calling for. So while systems thinking, for one, is not new at all, and transition design is not new, but what is new, as you're saying, Oliver, is that we're actually, as a company, going in and saying, okay, let's try and work with these frameworks and work in this way. And this is an offering that we bring to the world. So if we take a step back for a second, transition design is rooted in academia. The good people at Carnegie Mellon, they proposed this as an area in already 2015. And with all the respect to the work that is done in academia, we also think that now is the time to take it out of that world and into the real world and start using these frameworks much more to help come up with solution and cultivate these super complex problems that we see. Complex problems with lots of moving parts and layers, and there's a reason that they've become a complex problem. So just to dwell with this for a second, transition design addresses complex, systemic, yes, challenges such as climate change, social inequality, and unsustainable lifestyles. By envisioning, that's where some of our design craft also comes into play, by envisioning and facilitating, not the least, long-term societal transitions towards more sustainable futures. So in a way, this is a paradigm shift for design and designers, because we have a role to play, and we have a backbone that you were talking about, Cille, and tools and methods and ways of thinking about and reframing this in a way that we think is needed in the world, and can definitely start notching, pushing, cultivating these complex problems. So what's new, you ask? Well, design work used to be client coming to us and saying, okay, we have this problem, can you solve it? Yes, we can, we do something, we put it out into the world. So what's changing now is that we're moving up into and working with ecosystem of stakeholders because of the nature of these complex problems with all the moving parts and layers and all that I mentioned before. And that's what's changing, is that we are now designing with a different intention. It's not just an initiative on this level. We're actually, in other words, we're designing interventions, so to speak, because there is an intention to be able to transition the system, to change the system in some ways that are very preferable and that the world and these types of polycrisis actually are calling for. So let me show you how we work with this. So this started out as a collaboration with a Danish foundation, and we wanted to address the degeneration of soil and biodiversity due to the way that we use our land in Denmark. So what we do with transition design is, first of all, try to help us understand what's wrong with the world today. So that's this degeneration of soil and diversity, biodiversity that I'm talking about. And then the way we do that, it was with all the empathy, oops, sorry, microphone and sound, with all the empathy that we have as designers, not only for people, but for everything in that system. The first thing we do is to map it out. We make it tangible by using systems thinking and mapping all these different dynamics that are part of this complex problem. So we map the nodes, the variables, and this is where we start using our ways of analyzing and also sense-making. Sense-making is not a science. It's more one of the core things that we do as designers is to make sense. And we identify the dynamics, and especially where are the root problems in these systems? Because quite often when a client comes to us with a problem, well, we come up with a solution, but it might only be on a symptomatic level. We don't get to actually work on why this is happening. And if we could solve that, this problem might not even exist that we're trying to solve. So that's what we really make tangible and understand, so that we can also describe this future that we're imagining. In this case, a balanced system where land use supports ecological regeneration by embodying practices that sustain both people and planet. Okay, so then we move into the next, could almost talk about a funnel again, but sense making. So where are the leverage points in this system where change could make a big effect? So the root problems that I was speaking about before. And in this case, we want to go from extraction to regeneration. And we identified 3 that we're really working on and we believe has a big impact, which is, first of all, liberating land, because we only have the land we have, and it's all in use. So how do we liberate it so that we can enable, establishment of regenerative land use? And then once we have that, moving into localizing supply chain and getting good food and healthy food and for people and planet out to the people also. And here you probably recognize some of the way that we treat business design as well, because we approach this in a hypothesis-driven way as well. To say, okay, for this leverage point, we have a hypothesis. We can start describing what's this hypothesis about? What's the short-term influence? What's the long-term impact? And as designers also start naming these barriers and also translating this into how might we, so that we can actually bring our whole foundation and design thinking and start coming up with creative ways of solving these problems. In interventions that we can hopefully then launch into the world, and it will cultivate or change a little bit, because we are talking long term. We might not see the change immediately because we're working with these complex things that takes years to change. So in a very simplified way, this is kind of this is the approach that we use to do that. And just to go back, once we then kind of identified these leverage points, in this point, or in this particular case, our partner, the foundation that we work with, Planetary Impact Ventures, they start framing their initiatives now as interventions, creating this fund that is put into place to actually help liberate some of the land and do some of the other things as well. What we're doing in the meantime is mobilizing efforts, so inviting other partners in. Some of those are actually already intervening in this status quo, but getting together and working on this. And the way we fund that then is something that we are raising funds now to facilitate this transition journey, and a place that has the willingness to invest in the long term are actually all the philanthropic foundations that we have. So that we can co-create interventions and also again here bring the way that creative problem solving into this space. That nudges things a little bit. We're really aiming for this, but as I'm saying, this could be something that will take years to achieve. So just to sum up, the way we approach transition design in 1508, we do it in 2 ways. Sometimes it starts with a client project that has the transitional potential to say, okay, we're actually only kind of scratching the surface here. This is part of a huge, more complex problem, and we work it in that way. Or the other way around, as I've just shown you with the land use movement, jordbrugsbevægelsen, that we work from systems thinking and then into interventions. Yes.
We're good on time. Nice. Okay, so that was 4 perspectives. Our legacy, what we built upon, and the reason why we have done this is that we can see the problems that we are facing are changing. And we can also see, as you have probably experienced now, that when we have our foundation experience design, it influences all these, and you can see it goes back and forth between these things. So this is our toolbox now. This is the way we tackle these complex things. It has been untangible for us for 2 or 3 years, but I think we actually found a process now. And that feels good for a person like me that loves boxes as well. So the intention is also important here. And right now we are working with 3 different themes. So we are working on green transitioning. We're working with well-being for kids and young adults. And we are working on women's health. So different projects within these 3 themes with different partners in it, because we can't solve these things alone. We need to partner up. And just to give you a few examples on cases that we have worked on recently, we have worked with the Dankort on a project called Øremærket. And this is all about actually doing financial extraction. So every time that we use our Dankort to pay somewhere, we will donate 1 øre to the Danske Naturfond. And that actually sums up to more than 10 million. And when we put partner banks into this, when we put retail partners into this, they also donate 1 øre when you pay with your Dankort. If you have Merkur Bank, they actually donate 5 øre per transaction. So there is something where we can make a difference with green transitioning and financial extraction. I'll just jump. In terms of well-being for kids and young adults, we're working with the Lego family. They just bought this, the only 3-storage castle, or 3-floor castle in Denmark. It's in Djursland. And they actually gave Jim Lyngvild the task to decorate it as a Harry Potter-style castle. But what they actually want to do here is that they want to create a place where kids with neurodivergency can bring their talents, because they can fold out their creativeness here. So it will be a school where you can actually attend. There's more than 100 different rooms. And we're working with the Lego people also to create everything digital around this. So there will be a coin to access the different rooms. There will be a storytelling. There will be a way to actually apply to get into the school, and all the services around this, and the narrative and the brand. Super nice project. There will be a Morgenbooster actually in the fall about this. We're working with Kræftens Bekæmpelse on a project with women's health. It started out being an app for women in menopause, but again, building from just trying to solve this for the individual and understanding that this is of course part of a way bigger system. We are now looking into what projects can we do if we want to solve the relations part, the society part, and maybe the nature part of menopause. So a lot of different projects that we get to work on right now that are super meaningful. And when we work on these things, it feels like when we say dare to matter to create meaningful change, that purpose has actually given us a new purpose now, because it's beyond the projects, it's more a systemic thing. One more case is the root cause of the polycrisis. We have actually found out that a lot of the things that we work on are related to our current economic system. And right now, we're working with a fund out of New York that has a lot of money. And what they do is that they have actually created this emergence fund right now, and they use all their money to see if we can create a new economic system that are regenerative, one that actually fosters harmony between people, planet, and all living systems. So they will actually be able to fund a lot of these initiatives out there. They are also creating a media lab. They are creating a policy lab. They are creating a studio to help influence a lot of different things. check them out. They're called stray.works. To be able to actually understand this ourselves, we also have created these shift cards. And this is for us to understand what is the status quo of a system and what is the future vision of that system that we want to influence. So these shift cards, they all kind of represent the systemic shifts that are needed to create equitable and just futures for everyone. It is about something that are close to our hearts. You could say some of them could be political, but in its core, they actually just want to create a place for everyone to thrive. We will actually be open sourcing these shift cards soon, so you will be able to get them and read about them. Also, what we can see is that this could be important for boards to understand this. So transition design and systems thinking. And the reason why we say this is that it is the time for any organization out there to actually look beyond their own nose, not only look at profit margins and how we can cost cuts and maybe optimize something here and there, but we need to change. We either need to change by design or by disaster, as we say. So we are actually looking for boards that want to try to see if they can work with transition design and systems thinking to set a direction for the companies, to maybe help the management teams in the different organizations to navigate towards other success factors than they have used to do. So if you come from an organization, please reach out to your board and say, if you have a seminar someday, I think 1508 should come and join you for a couple of hours and give a new perspective on things. Also, we have an upcoming course on this in this fall, Transition Design, where systems thinking meets design. You can read about it on 1508.dk. And also some marketing, I promised you, Nina. Upcoming Morgenboosters, the next one, super exciting one. All those four are super exciting. Beyond greenwashing, unlocking sustainability literacy, navigating AI criticism with systems thinking, designing lovable experiences, and a case study with the Lego case I just showed you. So please sign up. Thank you.